Hi, I'm Stephen Comar, County Agricultural Agent in Sussex County, New Jersey with Rutgers Cooperative Extension.
Hi, I'm Bill Bamka, Regional Field and Forage Crop Agent with Rutgers Cooperative Extension.
You know, Bill, it's no wonder why the state animal for New Jersey is the horse. In fact, there's over 42,000 animals in the state on nearly 7,000 horse farms throughout New Jersey.
Oftentimes I get asked by many people, what can we do to improve the pastures, or why do we need good pastures? Well, the reason we need a good pasture helps meet the nutritional needs of our friend here, the horse. Not only that, the horse likes to be out and graze, and you don't want to have to worry about your horse eating toxic weeds or things like that. So if you have a well-managed pasture, you can meet the nutritional needs of your horse and not worry about weeds.
That's a really good point, Bill. In fact, most of our industry leaders suggest that an animal like such as a horse has nearly 50% of its dry matter as fresh forage every day. This translates to nearly 15 pounds of dry matter forage per day for an average recreational horse like this one here. And this can be very expensive and very cost prohibitive for many farmers.
That's true, Steve. And if you're looking at cutting the expenses of feeding your horse, consider your pasture. Your pasture, if it's well managed and maintained, can provide a lot of the forage needs for your horses. Not only that, you get environmental benefits. You don't have to worry about runoff. You don't have to worry about weeds coming in. There's a lot of benefits to maintaining a healthy pasture.
That's right. The horses also enjoy a good day out running and exercising on the fields.
Steve, we all know that there's a lot of benefits to having a good pasture, but think about a bad pasture. What are you exposing your horse to? Toxic weeds, parasites, we're losing soil, we're hurting the environment a little bit. So you want to make sure you take advantage of having a well-managed pasture.
That's right. We also want to make sure that we get the most nutritional benefit out of our pastures that we possibly can, knowing how expensive it is to feed a horse. But Bill, what is a good pasture, and how do we evaluate whether our pasture is good or if we need to do something else to make it better?
That's a good question, Steve. We get asked that a lot as an extension agent. One of the first things I try to tell people is just take a walk around. Take a look at what you see. Do you see a lot of weeds in your pasture? Do you see forage grasses? Are there bare areas of soil?
Another important thing that we really should be looking at is just how many animals we have on our pasture. Some pastures have just way too many animals, like this pasture here, where it's about 4 acres and we have over 5 horses on it. So that's a very high stocking density that also will put a lot of pressure on our pasture species.
Okay, Steve, so you made the decision. I want to do something with my pasture. What do I do? How do I go about it? That's the question that most people want to know.
Well, the very first thing that we should do, Bill, is evaluate our pasture, and we really need to actually quantify how we're evaluating our pasture. It's not simple as walking out and just looking and seeing what we have. We really have to have a tool that helps us assess the pasture, and that's what we're going to do here today. We're actually going to teach you a tool that's very easy and very simple to do, but will give you a really accurate assessment of your pasture. Bill, the string intercept method is a very simple way for farmers and landowners to determine the pasture cover on their farm or field. But when is the best time to do this method?
Ideally, we want to try to do it in the spring. We got their bare areas, the grass isn't really growing yet. We can really see what's going on in the pasture. But you can do it any time of the year. Just take a walk across your pasture. And like we said, it's a very simple method. The most complicated thing is probably the name. And there's really not too many tools that are required to do it.
Well, Bill, what tools are needed to do it?
Good question, Steve. You don't need a computer, number one. All you need is a few simple things. Get a clipboard, piece of paper, tape measure. That can go 25 feet, because when we're walking across the pasture, we want to take a random 25-foot section and just put the tape in. I've got a screwdriver to keep the tape in place and a marker to mark down what I say.
Well, let's give it a go. What do you say?
Sure.
This is a pretty random spot in the field. Let's try it here.
Yeah, let's take a 25-foot walk. Okay, Steve, now what do? I got my tape here.
Well, it's very simple. All we're going to do is we're going to start at the very beginning and start at the half-foot or 6-inch mark, and we're going to count what we see in that spot. But first we need to do something with the clipboard so we know how we're going to document what we see.
Okay, so what I'm just simply going to guess or write down is what I'm going to see, right? We're going to look for bare soil. We're going to look for forage grasses and weeds, right?
Yes, sir.
And don't forget, if we see a weed out there, we know if it's toxic or not, so let's write the weed name down.
So what we're going to simply do here is just going to start 4 columns that all the things that we can actually see when we stop at one of our marking points. And if while you're doing this you have problems identifying the weeds, you can always bring it to your county extension agent or your grazing specialist or your pasture land specialist, or you can take out some of the many books that we have or the fact sheets that we have on the Rutgers website that'll help you identify the weed. But this is very important when we're identifying pasture weeds because, as Bill mentioned, some of the weeds are toxic and can cause a huge concern for your horse. Okay, Bill, we're here at the beginning, and we're going to go to our 6-inch mark, and what do we see?
Looks like me, it's a little bare.
It's a little bare spot. So we're simply going to write down a bare spot on our chart.
Okay, 1 for bare.
And that's what we're simply going to do this all the way down until we reach the 25-foot mark, which would give us 50 observations across this section in our pasture.
Okay, what do you got at a foot?
We have grass, grass, grass.
Looks like you got a weed there, Steve.
Grass, grass, bare soil, and grass. Now, Bill, we've reached our 25-foot mark, which gives us 50 observations. What's our next step?
Well, if you're like me, you're not real good at math, it's easier to have 100 observations because then you can figure out the percentage to cover a lot easier. So what do you say we try another spot across the field? But let's make sure it's representative of this pasture. We'll have to take a walk across and we'll do the same thing again.
Okay, Bill, we've reached our second 25-foot mark. What's our next step?
All right, now what we've got to do is we've got to figure out what percentage we have of bare area, percentage of grass, and percent of weeds. So let me do a little bit of math and I'll let you know what we have for each percent cover. Now, Steve, it looks like we have 70% of the pasture is covered by grass, 20% of it's covered with bare area, and 10%'s got weeds.
Okay, so now we know that we have roughly 70% of our pasture is covered in desirable grass species. What does that number tell me? Is there any standards that we might want to use to tell us what to do with our pasture?
We generally have some rule of thumbs. If we have less than 50% desirable forage out there, we've got to consider taking a plow to the ground. We've got to start from scratch maybe. If we have between 50 to 70%, maybe we can just overseed. If we've got more than 70% grass, looks like we're doing a pretty good job, maybe just do a little bit of managing it. As you can see in the back behind us, are overgrazing a little bit, so there might be a grazing management issue there. But the next step is really to decide where I'm going to do. Am I going to plow, or am I going to overseed, or am I going to keep going the way I'm going?
The string intercept method is a very easy method for most folks to use with some simple tools you have around your house or farm, and it gives you the opportunity to really quantify what your pasture grasses are in your field. It's also very simple and it requires very basic mathematical skills, so you can go out there in any field and really see what your pastures are and determine the quality of your pastures.
If you want more information on horse pastures or what your next steps are, visit our website. It's www.njaes.rutgers.edu.
Or you could also visit your local county agent's office or a grazing land specialist, or any professional can help you determine the best mixes for your part of the country.